A left-leaning argument for gun rights. Let me just say before I start this video, I'm an anarcho-communist, so I do not believe in the state. That is why most of my arguments against gun control are anti-statist. LDR. Most of the earliest gun legislation was meant to prevent free blacks from owning guns and protecting themselves from white supremacists. Most of America's early history, almost all of the firearms were targeted towards minorities and slaves. National Firearms Act of 1934. Justification for the law was the rising crime rates, which were a load of crap. The actual reason for the law was to make low-income people have harder access cheap and easily concealable firearms for self-defense. Almost all gun restrictions and bans coming to a place right around the time great social upheaval, so the powers that be can keep control. Most gun control around was based on a few things. 1. The 1% was getting robbed by the proletariat. Can we have that? 2. African American groups such as the Black Panthers arming themselves protesting in public. The powers that be can't have that. 3. Protecting the pigs from being shot because only their lives matter. No one else is allowed to feel safe. For some reason. People also shooting politicians. Can't have people voicing their displeasure that way. The Firearms Act 1938. The justification for passing this one was cause bank robbers were quite prevalent at the time. The poor bankers think of the profits. The effects of the legislation removed the ability to own anonymous firearms and restricted firearms ownership from felons. A mother effect of it was creating another licensing fee for firearm dealers, making it even harder to get a gun if you're working class. The Mulford Act of 1967. This bill was proposed and subsequently passed with full support. NRA. The bill only existed because the Black Panthers decided to march on the Capitol with loaded guns which were legal. The bill made it illegal to carry loaded firearms in public in California. Can I have people defending themselves now? Can we? So who is behind the belly? We're a bunch of white guys, Democrats and Republicans. Don't worry, the bill was supported by racist Governor Ronald Reagan, and this is why we should not join the NRA to support gun rights as socialists. Gun Control Act of 1968, signed into law October 22, 1968. This one's excuse was people shooting public figures like President Kennedy, Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. Just ignore the CIA and FBI involvement in all those assassinations. Okay, what does the law? Well, more licensing fees or people having the right to defend themselves. What's that? Make you have to get a license for destructive devices which cost $1,000 a year. If you adjusted for inflation, $7,360.43. Destructive devices are heavy machine guns, rocket and other things you would need to take down a tyrannical government. Can't have those poor people have access to heavy weapons. Nope, only the government should be allowed to do that, and rich people. You can no longer buy firearms anonymously. What do you mean? The Fifth Amendment? What's that? We're the federal government, we can do whatever we want and abuse you and your rights. Don't worry, you can no longer buy a handgun at 18, but you can die for the military-industrial complex still. What's that? You committed a felony. I mean, we should be allowed to take away your rights cause you are a danger to society. Wait, the Constitution says otherwise. For some reason that doesn't apply to you. What's that? You have a mental illness. It's not like people with mental illnesses are more likely to be assaulted. You don't get any right either. What's that? You want to just buy a firearm with no hassle, but that would be your constitutional right to do so. Of course, you're going to have to go through a background check, and you meet any of our arbitrary reason you cannot have access to a firearm. What's that? Now want to remove the serial number of your firearm? I mean, it is your own personal property. You should be allowed to do that, but we are the federal government. We can do whatever the F we want to you. What's that? You don't have access to a gun store and you want to get a gun shipped to your property for protection from wild animals. Can't do. Because you might be a criminal or violent extremist plotting terrorism. F innocent till proven guilty. Law Enforcement Officers Protection Act of 1986, signed into law August 28, 1986. The next law on our list was enacted because a bunch of FBI agents got themselves killed by being bunch of incompetent idiots and using revolvers in the 80s. Why is FBI still using revolvers still when they have access to semi-automatic pistols? Who knows? The incident was 1986 FBI Miami shootout, which few of the agents lost their guns and one of the agents lost his glasses. So should the FBI re-evaluate their training regiments and get better guns than revolvers cause they hard of a load when you're being shot at? Sure, they did that, but they also get to take away some of your rights. Even though neither of the gunmen was using armor-piercing ammunition and it's pretty much never used in crimes, but it was banned anyways cause the FBI doesn't want to admit that the agents were completely incompetent, so they blamed something else. The government also add an additional fee to manufacturers of armor-piercing ammunition, $1,000 adjusted for inflation, that is $2,310.88. Also, if you manufacture armor-piercing ammo, you better able to pass a background check, right? That's you, but no longer be able to manufacture ammo anymore. And if you committed a crime with armor piercing, you will be punished twice. Sounds unfair, but that's the government. So wait, the law enforcement no longer allowed to use armor piercing ammunition? Nope, like all things, the pigs never held to the same standards as you and I. So why would they ban armor-piercing ammunition? It had nothing to do with the crime. The simple explanation is armor-piercing ammunition is something you need to overthrow. A tyrannical government can have the people having access to that. Now can we? Cause we're the federal government and we have your best interest at heart. Undetectable Firearms Act of 1988, signed into law November 10, 1988. This next law is completely and utterly stupid. I cannot find any examples of someone using a mostly plastic firearm or a firearm that cannot be detected by metal detector ever being used. High-profile crime. This was mainly a power grab by the federal government that was completely and utterly unwarranted, but that's the federal government for you. So the politicians can protect themselves from the people. That's almost all gun control in a nutshell. Gun-Free School Zones Act of 1990. Cause people kept shooting up schools, you know it's going to stop people from shooting up schools. Gun-free zones. Cause if you put up a sign that says gun-free zone, it magically makes people not bring guns to school. Cause people totally listen to signs like speed limits. People always follow those. Federal Assault Weapons Ban of 1994, aka Public Safety and Recreational Firearms Use Protection Act of 1994, signed into law September 13, 1994. The next law on R was justified with two things. One of them was Asian young man shooting up Texas A&M, and the FBI murdering a small group of religious Christians at their compound. The young Asian man's reasons for shooting up the school was because he felt sexually inadequate. No excuse for doing so, but kind of sad that virgin has become an insult. Having high-risk dangerous sex has become normalized, but that is a topic for another video. The second incident most of you probably heard of if you are older than 20 is Waco. Basically a small group religious Christians have a compound in Texas, and the federal government came in and murdered them and then lied about it and blamed it all on them. What's that? A bunch of evidence went missing. We don't know where that evidence went, even though law enforcement was quoted and saying some of the evidence was taken away in U-Haul and all the evidence was destroyed. But the reason the assault weapons ban really went two factors. Apparently they had assault style weapons, which is a vague term. For example, some people would consider an M14 non-assault style weapon because it's made of wood. It is a very frequently misused by neoliberals. It didn't even drastically lower crime at all, and most gun crime is committed with not with long guns. Lautenberg gun ban. The next law came into place because apparently too many people who are abusing the partners while killing them with guns. Even though no one has ever found a link between increased firearms ownership and muddling your partners in domestic disputes. So you one time yelled at your partner you no longer can own firearms and the government can come to your house and kill you cause you're completely disarmed. Supreme Court Case District of Columbia et.al.v. Heller decision, decided June 26, 2008. The next one was a Supreme Court case, where they attempted to disarm the populace by saying you need to serve in the military because the stupid well-regulated militia thing, which people don't realize the militia is the people of the United States, and they also tried to say you cannot own firearms for self-defense purposes, and this is why you do not trust the state whatsoever, cause all the state will ever be will be a tool of the only true way to liberate the proletariat from capitalism is by smashing the state. Supreme Court Case District of Columbia et.al.v. Heller decision, decided June 26, 2008. The next one was a Supreme Court case, where they attempted to disarm the populace by saying you need to serve in the military because the stupid well-regulated militia thing, which people don't realize the militia is the people of the United States, and they also tried to say you cannot own firearms for self-defense purposes, and this is why you do not trust the state whatsoever, cause all the state will ever be will be a tool of the only true way to liberate the proletariat from capitalism is by smashing the state. The next one is another Supreme Court case. Supreme Court Case McDonald et.al.v. City of Chicago, Illinois, et.al., decided June 28, 2010. Some cities decided to enact handgun bans and the most marginalized communities can get access to handguns. Luckily the Supreme Court for once were on the side of the Second Amendment. What's that? Does a bunch of drug dealers shooting up your neighborhood cause the cops won't come into the neighborhood at all cause they don't give two s about black people? Well, good thing you can't have access to firearms to defend yourself, thanks federal government. Fix NICS, signed into law March 23, 2018. The next piece of legislation was enacted because a bunch of people shot up some random locations. What's that? These people slipped through the cracks, or clearly the solution is more gun control and it will work this time. You can trust us, we are the federal government. Injunction of 3D printable gun blueprints, issued July 31, 2018. The next law on our list came into effect when people want to freely transfer 3D plans for guns. That sounds perfectly legal, not according to a bunch of neoliberal politicians, it's not. And on top of that the federal government entrapped the CEO of Defense distributed someone I don't agree with everything he stand for politically by having a 16-year-old go on the website for sugar daddy. We have to prove that you're 18 but somehow she slipped through the cracks, but come on, the FBI does it, blackmail people by tricking them into sleeping with underage girls. Bump stock ban, issued December 18, 2018. The next thing banned was bump stocks. Bump stocks allow you to increase the rate of fire of a gun, not make it fully automatic but similar. Wasn't even banned by passing a law, it was banned by Trump's AG abusing power. Because this is the federal government, they can abuse however much power they want. On a side note, you can bump fire without a bump stock, or you can just get events post and nail into a piece of wood. The final law on my list is red flag gun law. It's only in place in a few states but the current administration and the Democrats but considering making it a federal law. So what are we red flag gun laws? Well, did you ever go to an anti-government protest and you are clearly a violent extremist and you must have all of your guns taken away? Did you ever go to a rally on behalf of the Palestinian people, or you are clearly a dangerous anti-Semitic violent extremist who must have all his guns taken away? Have you ever been a member of any organization that opposes fascism? Well, sorry my good sir, you are now a violent extremist, must have all of his guns taken away because we're the federal government and we are keeping you safe from the violent extremist. What's that? You said that you can take my guns from my cold dead hands, or you are going to have all your guns taken away cause you are a violent extremist. What's that? You said that you can take my guns from my cold dead hands, or you are going to have all your guns taken away cause you are a violent extremist. What's that? You said that you can take my guns from my cold dead hands, or you are going to have all your guns taken away cause you are a violent extremist. What's that? You said something negative about any politician, or clearly you need to be arrested and have all your guns taken away cause you are a violent extremist.